My family typically has Thanksgiving over at my house. We live in an apartment at the moment, but it's not a problem because my family is small. There's only about 10 of us total, and there's plenty of room. We don't do anything crazy, usually just eat and talk for a little bit. We had just finished eating, and we're all in the living room watching Thanksgiving football. There were suddenly repeated bangs on the wall coming from the other side. Being in an apartment, our neighbor's place backed right up to ours, so we shared a wall. We were actually really close with those neighbors. Because of this, we knew they had gone out of town for Thanksgiving, and they weren't home. This made the noises coming from over there extremely odd. I was actually in charge of watching their dogs while they were gone as well. We muted the TV to see if we could hear anything else. There was nothing for a while. The front door next door suddenly slammed shut. I figured I needed to go over there and check on the dogs at least. If something happened to them while they were in my care, I'd feel super guilty. One of my uncles said he would go over there with me. I had a key, but it wasn't even needed. The door was unlocked. My uncle ran back to our place real quick and grabbed a kitchen knife just as a sense of security, I guess. I walked inside and didn't immediately notice anything. Everything seemed to be as I had left it earlier that day when I went to go check on the dogs. The dogs were out of view from the door, though. These apartments have an upstairs and a downstairs portion to them. The dogs were standing right at the bottom of the stairs, growling. It didn't take a genius to figure out what was going on here. I grabbed the dogs and basically dragged them out of there and into my apartment. My uncle stayed over there, but once the dogs were safe, I went to tell my uncle to come back to our side. He was standing at the bottom of the stairs looking up. I went over to him and looked up as well. At the top of the stairs, you could see someone's head peeking around a corner. Only their head was visible. The rest of their body was covered by the wall. It was hard to tell any features other than it was a man, and I'm pretty sure he was wearing a sweatshirt with the hood on his head. He didn't move though. I almost think he didn't even notice that we saw him. He surely had to have known. I told my uncle we needed to get back, and he followed. Once we were back, we told our family what just happened and called the police. They came out and investigated, but of course, by the time they got there, the guy was gone. Some valuables upstairs were even stolen. I had to call my neighbors and tell them what was going on. They cut their trip short and were back by the next day. They were grateful their dogs were safe, but obviously frustrated some stuff was broken. The police told us that the point of entry was an open window. We are on the first floor after all. There wasn't much we could do at this point. This was almost 3 years ago now, and we still have Thanksgiving at our place. This situation always seems to work its way into conversation in Thanksgivings ever since. I was driving back home after Thanksgiving at my uncle's house. Most of my relatives live about 3 hours away. A lot of times, I'll just spend the night at my parents' house or something, but I had to be at work the next day, unfortunately. I left my uncle's much later than I would have liked. I didn't even hit the road until about 8 p.m. I didn't mind the drive itself. It was just the fact that I was dreading going into work tomorrow. I was pretty tired, admittedly. I stopped by the gas station, got a Red Bull, and hit the road. I was ready to get home, so I was pushing the speed a little bit. I was definitely going 10 to 15 miles per hour over. The first half of my drive is just straight highway. There were a lot of other cars out on the road, probably returning home from Thanksgiving, just like I was. The second half of my drive is mostly side roads. These roads weren't always completely dead at night, but there were no street lights on them. It wasn't uncommon to pass a car every couple minutes though. I was even speeding pretty good on the side roads as well. I'd driven them so many times, even at night, I pretty much knew these roads like the back of my hand. I turned down one of the roads that was a little more quieter, still going at least 10 over. I turned a slight corner and my headlights caught onto a car up ahead. It took a second to realize that the car was stationary and that I was coming up on it fast. I had to slam on the brakes pretty hard to avoid hitting it. I was now stopped, staring ahead at this car in the middle of the road. The car was almost perfectly blocking both lanes in the road too. The rear lights and headlights were still on. The car appeared to be still running as well. I was frustrated. I was just ready to get home already, and this was definitely slowing things down. I waited about a minute, then got out of my car and walked up to the car in front. In hindsight, this wasn't smart, but I was tired and getting annoyed really fast. I walked up to the driver's side door and looked inside. There was no one in there, not in the passenger seat either. I took a step to the side and looked into the back windows. There was no one back there either. I grabbed my phone and went to dial for the police to get them out here and deal with this. Right before I finished dialing, I felt a hand grab my ankle and attempt to pull me to the ground. Someone was hiding under the car and reached out and grabbed me. They were pulling hard, obviously trying to get me to trip and fall. I kicked as hard as I could until the grip loosened. Simultaneously, I heard footsteps coming from the woods off to the right. I was out of there. I ran back to my car, hopped in, drove onto the other side of the road, in the grass, avoiding the parked car, and sped off. It took me the whole rest of the way home to finally catch my breath. I ended up calling into work. I just needed a day to recover. The whole thing messed me up for a little bit for a while. Ever since this Thanksgiving, I've not once been on that road again, even if it means going out of my way for at least 15 to 20 minutes. I'm not sure what happened with the people that I encountered that Thanksgiving night, but I just hope they didn't have an opportunity to lure anyone else and potentially meet an even worse fate than I did. Back when I was a kid, my family would go over to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving. My family is pretty big. There were about 30 of us total, and my family's only gotten bigger since then. Anyways, my grandparents' house wasn't exactly the best place to host Thanksgiving with a family as big as ours. There were literally people everywhere in every room, because there wasn't enough space. Some people would go outside just to talk out there, and open up some space inside for a little. Two of my cousins, Joey and Sam, were outside with me and some other members of the family. We were getting bored. There wasn't much to do at my grandparents', so we decided to go on a little walk. Our parents didn't mind this. We knew the area decently well. We were walking along the sidewalk, probably talking about stupid stuff that doesn't even matter, when I noticed this house that I'd never seen before. The house looked abandoned. There were vines growing on the side of it, and the wooden door looked rotted. I looked at my cousins, and I knew we were all thinking the same thing. We had to go inside and explore. This was exactly what we needed to cure our boredom. We walked along the perimeter, looking for a potential entry. We found a window that was slightly opened, so we just slid it up, and we were inside. The floor was littered with trash. We definitely weren't the first ones in there. It looked like someone had camped out in there or something, and just threw literally all their trash all over the floor. I don't even know what we were looking for in there. I guess at that age, we thought we were super cool for exploring a seemingly abandoned place. This house was only one story, so there wasn't too much ground to cover. We stuck together, just walking in and out of rooms, just seeing what was in there. There wasn't much of any interest in any of the rooms. There was a door that was closed right next to where the kitchen was. We all thought it was a pantry, but I opened it, and it was no pantry. It was a basement. and it was pitch black down there. We just had to go down there and explore. We had already seen the rest of the house, and we didn't have to be back at my grandmother's for another 20 minutes. Slowly, we made our way down the steps and into the basement. We got to the bottom and found one of those lights with the strings attached to it. I pulled on the string and, surprisingly, the light flicked on. It lit up a big part of the basement. There was nothing in there, just a bunch of concrete. There was one side room in the corner, however. It appeared to be some type of boiler room. We figured, why not take a peek at one last room, and then we'd be out of there. The three of us stepped in. There was no light in this room, but you could just barely see a couple old boilers in there from the light in the main room. It was just how I expected. My two friends stepped out, ready to go. I was still standing in the door frame where the two rooms connect. It got real quiet, and I heard this heavy breathing noise from directly to my right. I turned around, ready to tell my cousin to stop breathing so hard because it was annoying, but it wasn't either of them. It couldn't have been. I stepped back, took a quick side glance to the right, but I couldn't see anything. It was just too dark. The breathing persisted, though. I said I was ready to leave, and we hurried back upstairs, and out the window we came in. I didn't say a word to my cousins about what I had heard. I knew they didn't hear it, or else they would have freaked out. We made it back out to my grandparents' house with everyone else, and the rest of the day went normal. Years later, I told my cousins about what I had heard when the exploration came up again in conversation. They thought I was joking at first, but I convinced them that I was not. A huge part of me was glad that it was pitch dark and I couldn't see. I don't know if I was prepared to see someone standing in the boiler room of that house.